very standard report. You could probably take it, and you probably could take it next to last year's and see it pretty much reads the same thing. But just some points from that report or this communication is this year, there was an implementation of a new accounting standard, 606, which was related to revenues from contracts with customers. There really was no material difference in how you report your revenues, mainly because operating more in the grant realm, this does not necessarily apply to that type of revenue. Is this this one of those boxes we have to check to say that we implemented it because it is applicable under general accounting standards. Other things to note, we didn't have any disagreements with management or any significant difficulties performing the audit. So I do want to say thank you to Dan and his team and Joanne. I know it is very difficult to put up with us while you're trying to do your day-to-day business, and we're infiltrating your office and bombarding you with questions about various matters of the audit. So thank you guys. And also, we didn't have any material adjustments that we had to post, or pretty much what that means is we didn't identify really any balances that we had to adjust to make it materially correctly stated. So, there's positive things. Now, the real reason you guys hire us as auditors is this is what you're required to present is the auditor report. You hire us to give an opinion on your financial statements. And that's actually found in the main financial statement, which I guess I should have clarified those copies that went out. There's really no point for us to go through that page by page, and that's why we do this PowerPoint presentation instead, to kind of take the meat of that information and present it. But within that auditor's report, pages 1 and 2, it is our opinion report. In this report, there's an opinion on the financial statements, which was a clean opinion or a modified opinion, which is the highest level we can give as auditors. And there's also an opinion there about the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. That's an additional schedule you're required to have because you spend more than $750,000 in federal grants during the year. Another report that's in that package is actually near the back. It's part of the uniform guidance part of the audit or the compliance section. It's a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. This is not an opinion report. Is this really a report that signifies what certain processes we had to follow during our audit itself? So this really explains our consideration that, we use internal controls over financial reporting to help design our procedures. And also we tested matters of compliance, but we don't really give an opinion on compliance. It's just a matter we determined if there was any material adjustments we had to make if there was a failure of compliance in some capacity. But again, we did not identify any non-compliance as well. And finally, another report that's part of that package is the report on compliance for each major federal program. The difference here, when I was talking before about compliance, that's more in general, whereas this is specific to a major program. And year to year, the major program that we audited, because there's really no other major programs to consider, is the WIOA cluster. So that includes your dislocated worker grant, your youth activities, as well as your adult grant. Again, no material weaknesses that were identified in internal control and nor over compliance itself. So clean reports across the board pretty much. I should say, if anyone has any questions while I'm kind of just talking at you, feel free to jump in. I'm not really holding the microphone hostage here. I mentioned before there was an implementation of the new accounting standards 606. Again, this was something that's been delayed year after year to give people time to implement it. It's a new 5-step approach new 5-step principle approach to revenue recognition. And as I said before, really no impact on the WIB's financial statements for reporting because the scopes of grants don't fall under this requirement, but it's still just one of the things we have to go through the process of saying we implemented, just in case there were some processes that relate to this recognition, just to be in compliance with general accounting, generally accepted accounting principles, what I mean by GAAP. It's our, accounting shorthand, sorry. Here's something I pulled right out of the financial statement for you to see, because this is something a little different than this year versus the last couple of years that we had performed the audit. This is your report. Pretty much from in the business side, it would be like your profit and loss statement or your income statement. And really the difference here is we have a without donor restrictions column and with donor restrictions. Most of the federal grants you receive are with restrictions, but the ones that you see here, you met the requirements of that grant in the current year, and so therefore it's presented as if it's been unrestricted. The with donor restrictions is just a very accountingly thing that we have to do. Hate to, use a terrible word like that. But basically there were some fixed assets purchased for students to use with federal funds. And these fixed assets, you don't take a deduction right away. You take it over the life of the assets, which is estimated about 5 to 10 years or something. And basically just over time, depreciation of these assets each year will be your relief of this donor restriction over the life of these assets. So it's just one of those things we just have to go through the process of tracking it a little bit differently, even though the money has already been spent. So over time, this number just will deplete over time, year to year, with each year of depreciation. So I just wanted to kind of point that out for information purposes. I guess another thing to point out here, to change in net assets overall, looks like you're at a loss this year of $46,000, which technically is correct. But really what the reason for that is years past, the WIB has always operated on money in, money out, bottom line is zero because you spent everything you received. But last year, there's actually extra funding that was received in advance that allowed the WIB to use to their discretion towards their programs. And basically what this call for money was available was for you to do it extra costs this year and not apply it to future funding. So that's why it looks like there's a loss, which is not a negative thing to see based on your typical, how the WIB typically has acted in before. I always like to put numbers in a pie chart. It gives a nice little flavor to it. You can kind of see your different expenses by category. So what part of the pie makes up for salaries, which is your biggest cost. You're a big service provider, so it makes sense that salaries is one of your main costs. If you were to look at this pie chart next to last year's that I presented of pretty much the same thing, you would think that I just copy and pasted the same thing, but it's just the expenses you have are pretty typical and predictable in the sense of what they make up the whole piece of the pie. So it's good to see consistency. Other thing I want to note here is that of your costs that you incur, 91% of your costs expended relates to program services. What that means, it's services fulfilling the mission of US WIB. When I looked at some other WIBs over the last couple of years, I didn't look at it this year to be honest, but it was very similar to theirs. They had high program usage as well, of 88 to 94%. So you guys are right in the median. Excuse me. I think I swallowed some nuts, sorry. So your financials are presented just for the current, the current year. One thing I just wanted to show this year versus last year as it relates to different types of expenses you've incurred. Last year, the 3 expense categories listed at the top, they show decreases overall from the previous year, as if some of these important things the WIB offers have been used less and less. But that really kind of just correlates with the whole effect the pandemic has had on the industry. So it's kind of good to see that some of these costs are stable, as well as going up a little bit for the scholarship sense. I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware of all that. This from your board meetings and discussing the whole industry, what's happening with clients for serving and things like that. But it's just something very interesting to see. Like one thing to note, back in 2018 and 2019, these costs were up more around the, I think scholarships may have been more around the $500,000 to $570,000. So you see there's quite a difference between the years and what the pandemic has an effect on the people you've been trying to serve. And as you can see, the needs-based and work-based learning has pretty much stayed the same this year as the previous year, a little bit less than the needs-based payments, but just some things that are interesting that they see from a trend side. If you took the last couple years and put them all side by side, it was really hard to compare the years. So you would just have to understand, what COVID-19 has, how it has impacted the shore and the upper shore area. This comes right from the schedule of expenditure federal awards. It's not a full presentation of it, These are just the WIOA programs itself, just so you can kind of see the spending differences from year to year. Overall decrease, I mean, you receive sources of funding from other categories of programs. So it's not like you receive less money per se. It's just that these specific federal programs that we audited, major program, they funded a little less this year to the whole pie that we were looking at earlier. But it's kind of just a trend to see between the 3 different programs that we audited this year.
Assuming the left one is 2021, not really 2020.
I apologize. Yep, that should be 2021. But thank you for pointing that out. Yes, the left side is 2021. Another part of our issuance of the uniform guidance standards, or not standards, the uniform guidance statements, is the schedule of findings and question costs. There were no findings to report. The only thing you see on there is just some facts. How did we decide our major program? What dollar level did we use to decide it? Did we have any significant deficiencies, any material weaknesses? And this is looking at the financial audit and the compliance audit. I say this every year, but I mean, it's a huge compliment when there's no findings to report. Compliance testing is a lot different than your financial audit. Compliance testing is it a yes or is it a no pass situation? So that means if you got 99% yes, but you got that 1% no, you still failed the test. So one of those things I always harp on, if there's no findings, that is a testament to the staff you have at hand running the programs. So very good thing to see. Looking forward, I was talking about accounting standards earlier with the revenue recognition standard. This one will be effective for the year ended June 30, 2022. And they actually pushed us back. This was supposed to be, I take that back. This one, under government audit standards, this has not been pushed back. Right now, this actually has been extended another year. Basically, the difference with this is it relates to an operating lease beyond 12 months must be accounted for on the balance sheet, meaning you have to recognize an asset for your right to use an asset. You have to recognize a liability for the future payments you're going to have to incur. So this is just something that's coming down the pipeline. I put here June 3rd, 2022, because that's, it can be implemented this year. It was going to be, but they extended it another year just with the whole effect that COVID has had on the industry, not just the accounting industry, but everyone. It gives them more time to really figure out the complexities of this. Well, I've just been speaking at you guys. Any other questions?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if this is a Dan question or a James question, but I'll throw it out there and let somebody respond. Do we do a multi-year engagement with you guys, or just a year to year? Like, are you auditing us for next year? Do we know that already?
Yeah, we actually just renewed a 4-year contract starting with this fiscal year. So you're stuck with us another 3 years technically.
One of the things that we know, and I'm sure James, is Dan's retiring this year, and I would not want to do a new audit firm in the same year that our executive director retired personally. So I'm glad that is taken care of. Thank you.
So
any other questions?
Yep.
I see Tom is trying to, Tom Timmerman.
I just have a question that probably is stupid beyond belief, but we received from the feds COVID money.
Mm-hmm.
Is this accounted somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, so in my reports that I just showed you, no. You will see this specifically if you go into the financials, into the schedule of expenditure for federal rewards. Very difficult schedule to look at, in my opinion. But the Attorney General or the OMB, they specify how they want to see this information presented, so it gets a little convoluted. But it should be specifically identified on there as COVID-19 in the beginning of it.
I don't think it is.
That the big money, the ARPA money, is July 1st, 2021. So this audit ends June 30th, 2021. It'll be in next year's audit.
Right.
Didn't we get an earlier tranche from this?
We got it July 1st, 2021.
So we've only gotten one payment for the COVID.
Correct. We'll get a second one July 1st, 2022.
2022.
Which will be in the audit.
In this year's CFA, Schedule of Expenditure Federal Awards, the only one that was COVID specific that we had to identify as COVID-19 related came from the Department of the Treasury.
Mhm.
And that one is identified at the very top. Actually, that was easy to find. And then there's a few other smaller ones that are throughout, but they were not a part of the major program testing just because they have different program identification numbers.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, Dan, you can help me on this. The line item there for scholarships, what is that the individual training accounts that they're calling scholarships?
Yeah, and part of our struggle with Chesapeake College as our fiscal agent is we use an education-based financial system, and that's what it's called in the financial system. Scholarships equals ITAs.
Okay, I was confused.
Sure does. And I will jump ahead a little bit, but in the packet, there's in the packet there are two things. One is a financial position, and one is service level. Our service level as of today, we have issued more scholarships or individual training accounts between July 1 and today than we did all of last year. And we're up to somewhere in the vicinity of $550,000 spent on that. So it looks like we're on a track to train twice as many people and spend close to $1 million on scholarships in the current year. So, next year, hopefully that pile look bigger on that side, but
Any other questions regarding the financials or the audit? If not, we will entertain a motion to accept the audited report.
I move we accept the audit report.
Motion
I
from
second,
Tom,
Cliff.
second from Dr. Coppersmith. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Following up on the audit itself, we as a nonprofit entity are required to file a 990, which is our version of taxes. James, are you talking about that, or are we just approving it?
I typically have not talked about that. That was more of I believe you guys review outside that approve whether or not
Perfect.
to.
So I know PKS prepares it for us, but I know we do need a vote, an affirmative vote for Dan to execute it. Dan, do you have anything you want to say about the 990 before we?
no, not really. I mean, it's a best practice to have the board, review it. It's a super best practice to have the board approve it. So that's kind of what we're doing here. And the 990 is, pretty much based off the audit. A lot of it's very long, but really the first 2 pages are what it's all about.
The meat is the 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
All of our names are on there, so if you ever get bored at night, you can go to GuideStar and Google your name, and it will appear.
And if you're ever bored at night, you can read through that whole checkoff sheet about, do we have a tanning salon in the Caribbean? It's just crazy, but it has to be done. So,
all right.
Okay. I move.
Tyler,
Hey, George, I didn't see you there. You're back.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't get my video working for some reason. Usually Tom checks the math very closely, and Tom hasn't tuned in with any math mistakes. And I was just wondering if he's still with us. I don't see him on my screen.
He has made 2 motions tonight, so he is most definitely with us.
Okay, but I've lost him on my screen.
So we'll do this, and then I'll turn it back over to George. So can we get a motion to have Dan execute the 990?
I
I
move
make the
we.
motion.
Yep.
I don't
Oh,
usually get to make motions,
Ah,
You don't get to make motions.
but in this case I can I?
You're not the chair, so yes. So we have a motion by George, a second by Tom, for Dan to execute the 990. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed that want to be on record? Perfect. Dan will execute that. And George, back over to you, sir.
Okay, I just put away my agenda.
We're on the one-stop operator. report.
One-stop operator
Yeah,
report.
I think I'm next.
And who's going to do that?
I will. Samantha Parker. Hello.
Samantha, I'm sorry to jump in. I just want to say thank you, everyone. I was going to jump off this call. I got a 6th grade band concert to come to. So.
Thanks, James. We appreciate all your help and support.
James, you're the oldest 6th grader I've ever seen.
I'm still 2nd chair, though.
Thanks, James, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Good evening, all. Thanks so much for allowing me to join in. So it's been 2 months since I saw you last, and so you've received the October and November reports for the one-stop operator. I will tell you that our focus in between, we have our quarterly meetings, obviously September, December, March, and June. So our focus in between is working on some of those ancillary projects that you had asked for us to do. The main focus during the last 2 months has been the customer referral workflow, knowing that our customers are accessing each of our partners differently now. We are trying to make a very clean and easily understood cheat sheet that can be kept at each of our AJCs, so that when there is turnover with new staff or with our existing staff, they can understand how each of our partners is accepting referrals now, because we know that it's adjusted. Some are accepting virtually, and some are accepting the good old-fashioned way. And so that's been the main focus for October and November, of course, also in preparation for the December quarterly meetings, which we're about halfway done. They've been in full swing this week. So we're seeing good attendance in our quarterly meetings, and we're moving the needle toward collecting some of that data, knowing that it's very difficult, given that some of our partners who attend the quarterly meetings are not those data gurus of the agency. And so they're pulling as best as possible, but providing us with a little more concrete information about what's happening. So you'll see those in the reports again in the December report, like you did in the September. So our focus again, right now, working on the customer referral workflow. That's going to lead us right into the next topic, which is going to be mapping out again how our business services workflow happens. Same kind of a way, when a business reaches out to an AJC partner, how do they get to a business service worker? What services are provided, making sure that our frontline staff can make those referrals smoothly, like without dropping. Once that's finished, we will then focus on the financial piece, who has funds to be able to serve those consumers, and how they are able to be accessed by partners. As far as concerns go, I will tell you in the transition, I did note one concern, one challenge that I brought to your attention in the reports, that the telephones are not being answered very consistently in some of the locations. On a monthly basis, we are making telephone calls just to make sure that if a consumer were to reach out that way, that they would make their way through. This month, we switched it up some, and we reached out through the email addresses that go to each of the locations, just to make sure that we get, that nobody's going to a dead airspace, that they're not being lost in a landing pad there. And so that is given to each of those partners there. Let me go back over here. I'm going to cheat and go back to my report and make sure there's nothing else I wanted to highlight for you. Professional development. I guess I did not really cover that just yet. Professional development is, we finished our fall session. It was attended, but probably not attended as well as we were hoping for. We did identify a few kinks in the road, which are great because then we can address some of those things in future professional development. Our big push is spring. That's always where we do our larger event. And I'm sure, as many of you have seen, the question still lies: do we do it in person? Do we do it virtually? How do we How do we do? So we have been using this time to be productive and did a survey with all of our staff people. What did they need to see professionally? Also connecting with our Department of Labor and DHS training partners to see what's already provided. Just because they want to see something doesn't mean that their agency isn't already providing it. And so that way we can make sure our spring event provides information that is desired. I'll also note that we were looking at doing a customer service training, just a simple 2-hour for our partners to be able to join into. That has not been able to move forward because of time constraints with the trainer. So we don't have that currently scheduled. We have taken that off of the calendar, but we have reached out to those trainers again to try and move that needle forward some. I'm just scrolling through to see business services. Strategic planning is moving forward since the customer workflow is just about finished. We have drafted and we're getting ready to send that out to do the same type of mapping for business services. And again, it's a whole lot of words to say, make sure our partners know how to reach people now. We weren't in the office, we returned to the office, just making sure that all the partners know how to get in touch and make those referrals back and forth. I'm looking at the reports. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
I think just one, Samantha. Do you have any figures on the total number of clients who showed up?
Who showed up to the American Job Center?
Yeah.
I do not. So that is one of the that's one of the numbers that we are pushing for our partners to come to our quarterly meetings prepared. And we certainly can come and ask afterwards if they are not, but it happens to be one of the numbers that we are missing.
Do you have a feeling though, is it drastically down or up?
I believe that it is down, but it is down because many are accessing through those virtual methods.
Sure.
And so the physical location, I believe, is way down.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Samantha, and this is probably not an easy question, but largely, are you happy with the information you're getting back? I mean, you're never going to get everything you want. You're always going to get slower people and people that don't, I get that. But largely, and then the real question is there anything the board of the WIB can do to help support you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm going to answer that question in 2 different ways. The information that I'm going to receive is never going to match the information that Dan is able to provide because I'm getting information from the direct workers on what they're seeing anecdotally. So as long as we take it from that perspective of what they have the ability to provide, I am happy with the movement of data. Am I happy with what we get yet? No, we're not getting as much as I'm hoping for. However, I worked in government for long enough to know that things don't change so quickly. And so when we're moving from one fiscal year where we've had now 2 quarters where we have been asking for much more specific information, I'm happy with the movement of what we've been receiving. And I feel like it's telling you a picture better than it has 3 quarters ago. Do we still have a ways to go? Yeah. But I feel like that needle is moving in the direction we want it to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else I can provide?
Is anyone interested in receiving or to be included in the job service activities? Anybody on the board?
I'm already getting some of them.
Okay, well, that was a question that's in the notes that I thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
So
Good-
I do actually several of you actually are on the distribution list, but I would note that not everyone. So if you would like to be included on those distribution lists as well as be removed from it, I would be happy to do so. I think the other thing too is I did not highlight the listserv is starting to pick up steam. One of the things that we noted is that people had been sending me information and I had pushed it out to our larger group, but there was opportunity for growth. And so the listserv has been in place now for about 3 months. We gently pester every month so that all of our partners remember that this is available and you can put your items here, and it goes to a larger group. and I don't have to do it. So we're able to allow a discussion as well as a place for people to go and find something that had been shared. So if you would like to be part of the listserv, if you are not already, I'd be happy to add that in. It'll include anything shared by our partners as a whole.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I always love to see you, and I appreciate the opportunity. We do love to work with you.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Moving along, let's talk about, Dan and I had discussed this for a while, about having an investment policy. So Dan has drafted an investment policy for the board to look at. Because we have a policy doesn't mean we have to invest funds, but it's better to have the policy decided upon in advance should the decision come up to invest funds, and then we have to spend a month or two trying to come up with a policy on how to do it. So I'm going to turn this over to Dan now. We all have copies of the policy, and let's discuss it. Dan?
Thanks, George. And as George said, this is something you don't have to do, but here's some background on what's happening. Generally, all of our money is cost reimbursement grants. The Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, most everything we do is a cost reimbursement act. So, or grant. So what that means is there are strict rules about having cash on hand. You can request money and have some around, but you can't really have, there's rules about how many days worth of money you can have on hand. There are also strict rules about if you earn interest on that money, and strict rules about what you have to do with the interest you might earn. So a cost reimbursement grant is really encouraging you to just have the money on hand that you need in the next couple of days and not be sitting on a bunch of cash. We also do have some contracts. And in those contracts, the contract specifies how the money is going to flow. And, we really didn't have many contracts, but now we do have some. And they specify when we're going to get cash based on how we help people and the numbers we serve. And generally, the contract will say, when the contract's executed, you can ask for some or all the money, and then there are milestones where you can ask for more. The contracts may or may not have any information about interest earned, and may or may not have anything about disposition of interest earned. In general, the few contracts we have do not have anything about interest earned or disposition of interest earned. The reason all this came to the forefront is with the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And as Tom was alluding to earlier, that comes in two tranches. July 1st, 2021, we got $1.4 million in a check, up front. And on July 1st, 2022, we're supposed to get the same amount of money, another 1.4 million in a check on that date. So we're allowed, all recipients of this money are allowed to earn interest, and we're allowed to earn higher interest, which I assume means, a CD or some, higher yield savings account or something. Obviously, you'd want it to be very safe. And we can keep that money for program or administration. And that's kind of unusual because generally, these sorts of if you're allowed to earn any interest or you're allowed to have program income, you generally have to spend it on program. So because we all of a sudden have 1.4 million in the bank, and quite frankly, we have 5 years to spend it, you're not going to spend much of that money going into July 1st, 2022. So you could have over $2 million in the bank. It right now is in Shore United Bank, and it's earning interest. Here's a bank statement. So last month we earned $41.61. That's 0.04%. And over the life of this, investment, or the money we've had in this bank account, we've earned $147. So I would assume if you put it in a CD, you may triple that up to, $150 a month or whatever. So as George alluded to, this is kind of where I see things. Because of some of the contracts that we've received, because of this, ARPA money, is it worthwhile to, at some point invest? The idea of creating a policy doesn't mean we're going to invest. It means if you choose to, you have the policy to go forward. So I would think this is kind of where we are. We create a policy. If you decide up the road not to, pursue higher yield or higher interest, investments, then you just leave the money in the checking account and spend down and earn, a modest amount of interest, but it's not your major priority. If you decide to invest, then you would, use the policy. If you decide after, discussing it as a board that it's not really worth, the risk and return, it's not worth it, then you're just back here to leaving it in the checking account. And if you do decide to move forward with some sort of an investment strategy, you use the policy and invest. I would think you would want to, you would invest this in the absolute safest, yield that you could get. I took the Chesapeake College investment policy, and I took out some things I didn't understand, and I put in some things that I took out Chesapeake College and put in Upper Shore Workforce Investment Board, took out things like president, vice president of finance, and put in executive director, or, whatever. So that's the policy I sent out. I would suggest if you want to move forward with creating a policy, I would like some of our board members who are more savvy in this line of work, more savvy about finances than I am, to look at that policy, talk about it, be an ad hoc committee, whatever, to, make sure there are many parts of that I don't understand. If I was good at this stuff, I'd be retiring as a financial planner from like Merrill Lynch instead of executive director of the WIB. My comfort level is back here with cost reimbursement grants and rules about what I can and can't do. So I go, darn it, I can invest that money. I would, but I can't. So that's kind of where, I am personally. So again, the key is if up the road you decide you want to do something, in a year or so, you look at it and go, we've got a lot of money in the bank here. How fast are we going to spend it? Do we want to earn some interest off it? Then you would use a policy. But creating a policy does not mean you're going to invest today, tonight, tomorrow, next week. So that's kind of where we are. So Tyler, you've got your hand up again.
So without reservation, we should have a policy on investment. The fact that we're earning $41 on a $1.4 million investment at the bank is a travesty. For the policy standpoint is less of my concern. And Dr. Coppersmith, if you would be willing to yield for a question, does Chesapeake College have a foundation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, is there a possibility of, I don't know that riding along with your money is the right answer, but doing this through the fiscal agent with the foundation, is that a possibility?
Don't know the answer to that question. That would require the input of our CFO and probably our attorney.
Sure.
The question is, we do have a foundation. It's a 501c3. It is how, in most part, donations to the college, particularly cash, are made to the college. Now, in the case of in-kind contributions in certain situations, those are made directly to the college, but most of the financial donations to the college do come through the foundation, particularly private donors. This is all new to me as well. And so like Dan, I would want to have someone in the room who knows their way around these things, and that would be Karen Smith, who's our CFO. And also potentially we would need to advise with our council attorney to make sure we're clean on where we go with this, because obviously the WIB is independent of the college in many ways.
I would offer a motion for George to appoint a committee.
Could I ask a sort of doorstep question here? I've never heard of federal money, frankly, being invested in the stock markets or financial markets. The reason being, as I've been told in the past, is if you lose all that money, you're going to have to pay it back.
Yeah, let me jump in here, if that's all right. After the Treasury Department put out the regulations and the guidance with ARPA saying that interest is allowable, I immediately contacted Dan and said, Dan, we should think about a policy to invest these funds. This is highly unusual. Tom, you're absolutely right. First, if we do adopt a policy, that's issue number one, the policy should be directed to the ARPA monies and not to the WIOLA monies.
Yes.
We would have clearly audit exposure if the investment policy governed the WIOLA funds. That would just be a red flag right there. But here, the Treasury Department is opening it wide up to organizations receiving the ARPA monies and saying, point blank, interest is allowable. And then, looking at that bank account, I agree with Tyler that, that's pathetic, the interest rate that it's generating. The Federal Reserve indicated today that they're going to go north on interest rates in January. I expect CD rates will be competitively above 1%, and each percent is $10,000. And that is real change in terms of some things that the board might be able to do in the future. So, I mean, I agree with formulating a committee, but I think the policy has got to be restricted solely to the ARPA funds. And as far as investment in equities, I just don't think that that's a direction. In fact, college foundations, as Dr. Cooper Smith will agree, often do invest in equities. I don't think this is something that should be considered, investing in equities here. I think there's too much risk attached to that.
I would agree with that. With what little I know, we do not handle ARPA funding. That's not something that goes to the college. That's strictly something going to the WIB and to our counties. And I'd only have to agree with Mike on that one.
So, Michael, have you read thoroughly this Dan's proposed policy?
What was the question?
Have you read Dan's proposed policy?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have, and the question that came to my mind was the one that Michael just alluded to, which is it leaves the subject of the investment wide open. We could be buying gold futures.
That's why we presented the policy for your review, so you can make suggestions as to how it could be modified and made acceptable to the board, which I think is important to do before we say, oh, we got this $3 million sitting here not earning, it's earning, instead of $41, it's earning what, 120. So we have a policy in place that says what monies can be invested and where they can be invested. It's just like today, I had my first bomb threat in 43 years of employment. I had a policy on what the hell to do when somebody says they're going to blow your building up. And I was amazed it actually worked. I evacuated the building in less than a minute and a half. But I had the policy in effect. And that's all we're suggesting at this point in time, that we review what Dan's put together, take out our pencils and say, no, add to it that, okay, we really need to restrict this to certain funds. And that's what we need to do. But the whole idea is let's get a policy in place that we don't have to use. The board could meet and say, hey, we have $3 million sitting in a checking account. The checking account's federally insured for $250,000. That might be a consideration we're gonna have to look at in the future too. We got $1 million in it now. It's just that I think we all ought to take this seriously and review the policy. And if we have areas we're uncomfortable with, let's discuss it.
Okay, I guess, George, what I'm saying is there is probably federal law on this kind of issue, and it might be a good idea to research it.
I would think.
Bruce, would you chime in?
I would think that would be part of any review that we did of the policy, and that would be parameters that we could put into the policy.
Yeah, but I'm only talking from some experience in federal funds, but
You've never experienced something like this, Tom, where the federal government has said, you can invest the money if you want.
no, they say you
You're
can
saying
collect
is-
interest, George, they say you can collect interest. They're not saying you can buy equity shares.
Are you not listening? Are your ears?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. But what I'm trying to say is we're not saying we want to buy stocks and bonds.
No, but
there
it's
are-
left open, George.
I mean, but Tom, everything is left open. It's left open to the board to decide, no matter what the policy says. The
No.
board's still the fiduciary. So
Okay,
it
you
would
all-
have to,
you all can do
Dan would
what you
have to
want.
come back to the board and say, I want to invest in T-bills, or I want to invest in Windows, or I want to invest in Apples. And at that point, no matter what the policy says, the board is the fiduciary to say, that's a bad idea.
No, I understand all that, and I think that's fine. I do think federal law should be looked at because it may limit a lot of what our options are.
Nobody disagrees with you, Tom,
Oh, that's good.
but we have a base document that we haven't adopted as a policy for the WIB. We've suggested to the board that they look at it, that they read it. If they have some issues and they need some research done, they research it and come back to the board and say, I don't think paragraph 3 under prudence should read this way. I'm suggesting you might want it to read this way. That's all, Tom. We're not shoving this down the throat of any of the board members. It's something that we're trying to prepare because we know it's coming. We're going to have all that money sitting in the bank. And if we can put it in a secure, safe investment, an investment doesn't have to be, it could be another high yield checking account somewhere else. Or a high yield
Can I
savings.
ask a question at this point, Dan McDermott? I know, the equivalent for us of DARPA funding has been HERF, and we've, every step of the way, we've worked with our auditors on what was acceptable usage in terms of expending. I'm wondering if our auditors could be helpful with this federal guidelines on this particular DARPA funding.
Yeah, and the thing about the policy, again, I asked the fiscal staff at the college if there was an investment policy. They said, yes, send it to me. And I just went through and changed stuff. I didn't really understand some of it. But, so there is, there are a lot of resources. One, Michael Brustein is a resource for us. I would assume that you would want to have a policy that said safety, 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 safety of the principal. That would be your key driving force. That the safest possible, safest possible instruments. But that's the thing. And I've never, I think many people are stunned by the way ARPA is unfolding. You know, I was quite stunned to see a check for $1.4 million.
I think some of the Maryland WIBs are getting close to 25 million, aren't they, Dan?
I think Prince George's is getting around 11. You know, the bigger areas, you know, the ARPA money is allocated to us based on our WIOA allocations, same formula for the adults. So we're getting about 4%. So 2.8 million is 4% of what came into Maryland and was distributed out. So some folks, you know, are getting, you know, tons of money. They get a lot more than we do. So
But it's clear that the government has said that we can earn interest on this.
and keep. So what I need is, how do you want to go forward? I think Tyler suggested a committee. George has suggested people read it.
Yeah, so if I
I
could
need
just circle,
people who understand what that policy says. To look at it.
Eric has his hand up. Eric,
Well, what I would say is, Mr. Chairman, do you need a motion to form a committee to review and research an investment policy? Is that what we're looking for here? If so, I would make that motion.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I think
Do we have
Connie
Do we
has
have
her hand up.
volunteers that would like to sit on the committee?
I'll sit on it.
Obviously, I would like Michael Brustein to be on the committee.
Michael, would you accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, did I see your hand come up?
Sure, I'm happy to be on it.
Anybody else? Eric, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, if I made the motion, I should be willing to sit on the committee.
Okay. Tyler, are you interested?
I mean, if you need a body, yes, but this is not in my wheelhouse.
Okay.
Connie, I think Connie's trying to say something.
No, I was going to offer to sit on it.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Dan, there's your committee. And could I ask Dr. Coppersmith if the committee could consult with your CFO, at least for their first meeting? Be it Zoom or
Absolutely. And
however?
yeah, absolutely. No question. That's definitely, that's fine.
Okay. Eric,
And I would also, can we also ask Dan to send it over to PKS, the policy he put together, to see if they could offer some general first thoughts?
That's great. Yes. And Eric, would you chair the committee, please, to make sure it moves forward?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think that takes care of that, Dan.
Thank you. This one is one that I really didn't care which way it went. You know, this is all about your all's comfort level. So, you know, thank you for moving it forward. I think it's a good idea. But again, it's not one where I'm not willing to fight you in the parking lot because we're having a virtual meeting, so we can't. But I appreciate y'all being willing to work on this. I think it's a good thing for you for the future.
And Dan, I think it just makes sense to have something in place.
Yep.
That we've already talked about in advance so that rash decisions aren't made a year from now.
Yeah, well, and you had your example today where you had a bomb threat. I'm sorry to hear that. And, you know, when you followed a policy, I'm coming from the fact that auditors, monitors, people come here to see me all the time and they go, okay, so you did this. Yeah. Well, why'd you do it? Well, because of this. Okay, where's your policy? You know, you know, and everything's going fine till you go, oh, we don't have a policy. So that's why we're there. So I appreciate you all taking this seriously. I think it's a good thing. And again, that decision tree doesn't, you know, I will say this, my son who invested money in crypto, which I, even as a monetary economist, don't really understand. And he paid off a $90,000 student loan.
Woo.
So you know, y'all need crypto. I don't even know what it is, but apparently you can win big or lose big or something. But
Wow.
anyway, the last thing
Could I just interject one more thing though?
Sure.
Even if we develop a policy that says we won't invest, that's a policy that when they ask us where our policy is, Dan can say, here it is.
Yeah, it's there in the drawer. So the last item is an update from the search committee. Mary Ellen Carter sent some information, but George, Tyler, they're, you know,
Never-
but and I would, and Michael,
Michael,
I will caution you all, Beverly, I'm naming the people who are on the committee. Don't discuss people by name, candidates by name, but if you can update on kind of where things are going with that search, I'd appreciate it.
Since
Michael,
Mary
why don't
Ellen,
you keep us legal?
I would defer to Beverly.
I would
Beverly?
defer to Beverly.
Okay,
So the committee has met several times and the position was posted initially. And we did have some interviews, but we felt the candidate pool needed to be a little broader based on the number of applicants we received. We posted it a second time. And we have started those interviews, and then the committee will have face-to-face interviews and then have something to present to the board.
Is there a due date, Beverly, in your mind?
I think is it the February board meeting that we're looking at shooting for?
The goal is to be done interviews and make to the board in February.
Okay, thanks.
Don't hold us to that, but that's the goal. We have holidays coming up and who knows, right? So
We're working with a lot of people's schedules and, but that is our plan.
Thank you.
getting the four of us plus two more to find more than 1 hour at a time that works for everybody is sometimes a challenge.
If it's been very time consuming, very time consuming.
But hopefully you won't have to do it for another 26 years.
I would not put money on that one, my friend.
You just need to hire somebody like me that doesn't have any transferable skills.
Oh,
So that's
Mr.
the
Chair.
update on that. It's ongoing, and I know they're working very hard. I'm not really involved in I'm not involved in the process, but I know they're working very hard and are really taking it seriously, and I appreciate all the work. And I will tell you, you can see behind me, everything is gone and empty. So as soon as you all have somebody, they can have the chair, and I'll sit back there.
Without mentioning names, does any of our board members that aren't on the search committee have any questions that we can try to answer? We want to be transparent, but we also want to protect the privacy of those going through the process.
it's a little difficult if we don't know the kind of people that you're talking to.
Tyler, how many people have applied and how many are moving on in the process?
Beverly, I want to say we got close to 40 applications by the end of the second term. Can I tell them how many we've interviewed? Connie is the only one, right? Michael and I are not HR people, so we look at Connie and George to say, "What are we allowed to say this?"
We can give them a number. We don't have to give them a name.
Yeah.
We have interviewed 5, 6.
Okay. That's a good.
He just counted them in his head.
Yeah.
I was curious if you were down to 1 or 2 or if it was a bigger field. So that's a good number.
Any other questions? I believe it's time for a motion to adjourn then.
I move we adjourn.
Just a question, or just a real quick good news thing for you to take home with you tonight from Chesapeake.
Good.
Our men's basketball team has been rated number 13 in the country.
Woo.
And we're 10-1 for the season. We take on Hagerstown College, Community College, a friendly rival of mine because of the president there. But we take them on tomorrow night. So if you're looking for something exciting to do, at 7 o'clock, we take on Hagerstown tomorrow in the the HPAC gymnasium. And we're real proud of our men's basketball team as well as our women's. The women start at 5, the men play at 7. So just good news for Chesapeake this week. They've been in the top 20 for the last several weeks. They moved up to 13 over the weekend.
What
Terrific.
division?
That's
What
awesome.
division are we in? Dr. Copper, what
We're at
division?
JUCO. That's Maryland Junior College. That's our first our association that we're in. And, we have gone to the Nationals with our women's team almost last year. And the year before that, we were at the Nationals. So our athletic program, for as small as it is and underfunded as it is done very well.
And I'll say back in the day when I had a middle school son, on Fridays, if Chesapeake College was playing basketball on Fridays, we used to come up and watch basketball on Friday instead of him running around Easton at the movie theater and the bowling alley. And it became a big family thing. We'd come up to Chesapeake, we'd watch the game and stop at Dunkin' Donuts on the way home. And we think back on that fondly. So I think I'm coming tomorrow night.
I have a board event tomorrow afternoon, but I'm hoping to get there myself around 7:00. So if any of you make it, I'll be glad to see you.
Good.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Everybody, if I don't see you
Happy
before.
holidays.